This is Stats Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morton, coming to you from Lovely City of Atlanta, Georgia. And we're going to talk a little New York football today. We're going to talk about the Giants, the Jets, what's going on up there. Let's go full screen to a puzzling-looking Daniel Jones for people who can see on the screen here. An inquisitive-looking Daniel Jones here who's wondering what's going on. This was probably during a game where he was wondering what's going on. A lot of us were wondering the same thing during a lot of games that he played. Now, what's interesting is that you see a lot of people now getting, I don't know if I'm hearing, am I hearing sympathy for Daniel Jones? Are you seeing a little bit of that out there for people like, I don't like how it's handled, or he never got a shot. He's been there like 6 years. And some of the stuff I'm hearing from
from the team, I hear more from the team. Like there's like, I guess, did you hear like, I guess when the coach was doing an interview, there was a lot of commotion in the background, and and it was confirmed that it was one of the players, that he was upset that Dan Jones was cut. So that's where I'm hearing it. I mean, I have not heard that from Giants fans. I mean, I can't think that they're not, upset about this person leaving town. I haven't heard that.
Well, it's definitely not all his fault. Because how some people will say, "Oh, it's not all," but it is. It's still the Giants' fault because he's not that good. He has never been that good. As a matter of fact, let me go to see if we can. Let's go to the stats here, since we are a stats show. For this year so far, 2,000 yards, 21st, 8 touchdowns, 29th, 7 interceptions, barely on the right side there, and a 46.3 QBR. 63% this season, I think, is what he was throwing. Yeah, 63%. Not exactly setting the world on fire for the career, for the entirety of his NFL career. 14,582 yards, 70 touchdowns, 47 interceptions. I mean, at least he's right side up there, but
right.
I mean, you're not exactly 2 to 3 to 1. You're not 2 to 1. I'll say that. It's not a 2 to 1 ratio. But this is the reason I think that he is not on the team anymore. He's just not that good. He's never been that good. He was the best year that the Giants had. They had a healthy Saquon Barkley. And that's the guy, we'll talk about him a little bit later in the show, the guy that we said over and over. And you know what's crazy about this is we sit in our houses, homes, wherever we are, wherever we may live in the country, and we'll be watching these things on TV. And I could not have been the only person watching Hard Knocks, the Giants version, the GM, and I like that. The front office stuff, man, I'm a fan. I hope Hard Knocks does that every year. A little Palace intrigue there, right? You get to go in and see kind of how the sausage is made there from a front office perspective. But it was terrible. When you listen to what was going on, I don't even know if they'll do it again based on just how horribly a lot of that stuff aged. It aged so horribly, and now the Giants are paying for it. I think you told me on social media, I'm not really super active on social media, that those clips from the Giants Hard Knocks are circulating, and they deserve to be circulating. The one where his son tells me he should take Jaden Daniels, so you can only get the job once. I mean, that kid should be GM. Obviously, he's making better decisions. He should have been sitting in behind that desk. And also the fact that you hear the guy say the ridiculous. What really rubbed me wrong was when he said, "Let's call Saquon to see if he wants to be a Giant." What the hell are you talking about? He wants to be paid. That's what he wants to be, Eugene. He wants to be paid. Of course, he wants to be a Giant, but he wants to be first. He wants to be paid. Pay the man. And you guys deciding, putting the onus back on him as if you're volleying the ball back over the court. Saquon, we're doing everything we can over here. Please come back to the Giants. That's not the energy you guys had, man. No. You also said that you did not want to pay $20 million or $12 million, my bad, for a quarterback. For $40 million, you want to pay $40 million for a quarterback to hand to a $12 million running back. Well, it's working pretty good in other places, right? It's working pretty good in other places, as we will definitely talk about down the line. But what do you mean you don't want to? Do you want to not pay for another position because you pay for the quarterback? Is that a winning? Since when have we seen that be a winning recipe for success? We're not going to pay anyone. We got the quarterback now. What are your thoughts on that? And because I could rant on it all day, and I probably will go back in and rant on it a little bit more, only because of the absolute ridiculousness of it.
Well, not only did the kid come and say, "Hey, we should draft Joe, or we should draft Jaden Daniels," but also there's also the shot from the draft, and he's like, And even the coach was like, "Oh, no, we're sticking with Daniel Jones." So it's like, not only did you have a kid telling you, but then you have the grown up in the room saying, "No, we should stick with Daniel Jones is our guy." Who hasn't, like you said, who's had one season, right? And the one successful season he had was with Saquon. And then you also have the fact that you can't just throw away the running back position, right? You can't just throw it away at this point.
Oh
You
yeah,
have to invest some kind of money
you
into it.
gotta start. You gotta start respecting it,
right?
It's interesting here. It is
okay. Right, fine.
What's interesting here is it's like your daughter wanted to chime in on there.
Yeah, she did want to chime in.
She's not happy about this Daniel Jones situation. Obviously, she was like, "I can't sleep. You talking about this guy in here?" But what's interesting is everybody seemingly knew this except the people sitting in the office, and that's what makes it very funny to me. Is that everybody knew this except the people sitting in the office, man? And how is that possible? How is that possible? Like, how is it possible that we all could see that trading your best player was not a good idea? That's what you've said. Trading your best player is never a good idea unless you are planning to rebuild. If you know you're not embracing that rebuild, you hold on to your best players. It's kind of strange to watch you guys from an outside looking into the Giants organization, pay somebody that kind of money. Go after a Brian Burns. You're paying money to somebody, but you're not paying it to your best player. And without your best player, the money that you're spending on these other guys is just not going to matter as what you're seeing, right? And the absolute travesty of trading the guy in your division. Who's responsible for that?
Well, not even trading, right? They just let him go. That's the thing. They don't get anything back for him, right? They didn't get anything.
Wait.
Is that right? Am I right on that side?
I think you might be right, man. I think they told Saquon to go and test the market. If I'm not mistaken, I'll go back and look and see if he just walked for absolutely nothing. Which means they definitely should be some heads rolling there in New York if that's the case.
Yeah, because they like, look, we're not going to franchise you. Go test
doing him a solid, right? They're doing him such a solid. Hey, man, listen, guys. We're not going to franchise you. I'm not going to hold your hands here, man. You go try to get the money, which he does in like 5 minutes. He comes back 5 minutes later. I got the money from another team.
I mean, at least at the NBA, at least you have the shot, the signing trades. Like, at least guys, okay, can you at least come back? Let's sign and trade you. Maybe we get some things back for you. This wasn't even that. This is like, go see what your market value is. Oh, your market value is too high for us. Sorry. We'll see you later.
Oh, goodness gracious. You know what's funny? Why even lie? Don't lie to yourself, man. And you saw the guys too in there trying to guess what Saquon could get on the market, looking like some clowns. Like, okay, can he get this? We don't really know what his market value. Oh yeah. Oh, everybody else knew his market value.
Yeah,
everybody else knew what it was. Everybody knew what it was because he was your best player. He was the best human being you had playing on your team. If you're paying another guy this $40 million a year, what do you think the market value is on the best player on your team, Eugene?
It's absurd how they just like, it's like, you didn't realize this, and then he goes to a team that realizes his value and go, by the way, he doesn't have to, like, if he has an off game, which he hasn't had one of like last couple of weeks, but just say he does, they've got a talented roster around him that could pick him up. So you're not relying just on him every game. So it's a win. I'm just happy for him. He's actually in a spot where he can go to a playoff, get to the Super Bowl. So I'm just happy for Saquon. It's just sad for Giants fans.
Well, I think the moral here is, if you are a GM on a football team and your best player wants to leave your team, you tell them no.
Yeah.
No, you're not leaving my team. We're going to have to figure something else out. I don't know what you're going to do. You got to pull Lakers, man. For people who don't remember, Kobe Bean Bryant, the legendary, was going to leave the Lakers. And you know what the Lakers said? The Lakers said, no, please do not leave. You know what? Lamar said, I'm going to unfollow the Ravens, man. We're not going to talk no more. Until we get things figured out. You know what the Ravens said? Don't clean out that locker, brother. Don't clean that locker out.
Right.
Because you're not going. You're not going. That's what teams do to their best player. They tell them, I feel you. I know you're upset. Maybe we could work something out. But the last thing that's going to happen is you leaving my team. That part is not going to happen. So it's interesting here that you had such a misevaluation of talent that you felt that Daniel Jones was that person and not Saquon Barkley.
Right. And what do we always say? What is our number one thing we say on the show? Sign the asset. And if the asset gets upset,
you got to keep him.
Trade it. Trade
him.
Got to
move it when it gets distressed. Get something for it.
Get something for it. I mean, you're right. You're not going to get a number one. Maybe you get a number two for Saquon, but maybe you get three or four round picks. I mean, in this day and age with the NFL, the more picks, like you especially when you're trying to rebuild, you need to build picks. And now what you've done, you've let Saquon go, and now you're cutting Daniel Jones going. So Daniel Jones, I mean, we know the second year of the contract was a better way to go, but that's still going to be dead cap money against your salary cap next year, which is going to help. It's going to hurt your rebuild. So, which you could have just maybe.
Do you feel like
Saquon.
Daniel Jones was being mistreated at all here with the way that he was? Because they were saying so in Daniel Jones' defense here, because I'm not just going to pile on the guy. In his defense, they were some stories that he would play other positions. He was willing to play safety on the scout team and stuff. He was willing to do all kinds of stuff. Maybe play on a practice squad, different positions here and there. And the Giants was like, no, bro, we can't have you tripping and costing us millions of dollars out here.
Right.
So we're going to put you in bubble wrap and put you on the shelf. And he said, no, thanks. And maybe this works out for both parties here in the end. I feel like they definitely could have been handled better. Business is business. I don't think that is. I mean, $120 million, not or 160 was the deal? I think maybe he got 120 of that, 100 to 120 somewhere in there.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Not crying him in a river for that. I mean, he's going to be okay. He's going to be
okay. Yeah. So they paid all that money to a backup quarterback, basically. So there you go.
Now let's talk about this because this was sent to me by one Eugene Morton. So Sam Block sent this tweet. It says the Giants let Saquon leave, the Titans let King Henry leave, the Raiders let Josh Jacobs leave. Those three teams are combined 7-26. Those three running backs are combined 24-9. Maybe, just maybe, elite running backs matter. Man. So this is absolutely true, right? I mean, we don't even need to spend a ton of time digging into this. All we have to do is pull up Saquon here and show that illustrate that this is absolutely a fact. As Saquon puts up quarterback numbers, quarterback yardage here for some of his games, it's an amazing thing to watch, right? You got guys that still have something in the tank, and maybe the running back position, we have seen that you can start a Kyron Williams last year. Maybe he comes on or something like that, right? And maybe you can get some replacement at the position, but that doesn't mean that the elite guys are not still elite. And I feel like that is the problem right there, is discounting the very top of that tier, the very top tier running backs. They're discounting them as if they're not very top tier. And if they're not a very top tier running back is not an asset somehow. You're seeing how teams look at how the 49ers have looked this year without Christian McCaffrey being as good as he was last year. You know, without McCaffrey being the McCaffrey he was last year, the 49ers have looked pedestrian a lot of times this year. And what are your thoughts here on the tweet and just the thought that maybe running backs getting a little bit of revenge here coming into this year?
Well, I mean, too, look at the QBRs for all those quarterbacks from last year to this year. Now that they have running backs, you know, now teams have to respect the running game. Not like they didn't have good running, backs before, but now they have elite running backs. So now teams have to play like 70 guys on the block, right? And so, I looked at today. Lamar Jackson. What do you think, Lamar? How many interceptions do you think Lamar Jackson has this year?
I think he's got like maybe 2.
Oh, you're so close. He only has 3 interceptions this year.
Yeah. It's very, very minimal. Very minimal. So and his rushing touchdowns are down because he doesn't have to put his body on the line. He can actually hand the ball off to somebody to run over the goal line. Save his body a little bit.
Right. So you're seeing all those factors again. So you can't discount the not elite running backs, but just having running backs in general. Look at Dallas. I mean, they try to patchwork it with, washed guys, and it's just not working out. But either you draft 2 good running backs. I mean, and maybe you get lucky like Detroit. You just have the Thunder and Lightning squad they have. Now they have that down there, but you running, you can't just like you said, discount the running backs, because these 3 guys here are just proof. And the Titans, I mean, I get it. Henry 29, I think he was going in his age 30, going to be 30.
They made it sound like he was turning 40.
It really did.
When he left there. You would have thought, like, when I looked at his age, he's just 20, he's like under 30. They were making it seem like, oh well, there it is. He's pretty much over, man. Time to hang it up. He's over there running over dudes.
Opposite.
All right. Running dudes over. Still, just like he was last year.
Still. And it's like, like you said, and look at every quarterback those 3 guys have helped all their 3 quarterbacks improve. And again, like you said, look, Lamar hasn't had those weird, shoulder injuries, ankle injuries, because hey, he's got a top tier running back to hand it off to. So yeah, it's proof in the pudding. And plus those 3 teams, those teams just seem rudderless anyway. So it's like it makes sense to kind of like just let those guys go, because we knew the Raiders, we knew where the Titans were going to be this year. I mean, we kind of knew where the Giants were going to be. I mean, once they let Saquon go, so weren't surprised by that scat, but it is proof that you just can't let talent walk out the door.
I think that's it, right? You can't just let talent walk out the door. Like, if you have an excellent corner, if you have an excellent linebacker, if I felt the same way when your Khalil Max and Roquan Smiths of the world were leaving teams, and I'm like, these are good players, and they're not just growing on trees, and you're going to overpay for another one later on down the line. So it's interesting that people maybe value these players a little bit differently than we value them. And I feel like the running backs are having a good resurgence of, when you look at the top teams. Let's go and look at some stats here. Let's look at stats for some running backs here in general. Okay, so if we go to the top 10 here, because another guy we failed to mention here, because we got Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, but another guy is Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones. Let's talk about that, because I had 4 guys here listed. I had Saquon, Joe Mixon. Actually, I had 5. I had Saquon, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones are the 5 I had listed pre-show, of guys that may have probably disrespected and doing pretty good on their new in their new situations. They're all winning. They're all doing better than they were previously, except Jones. I feel like the Packers are still a pretty good team, so he would have been doing pretty well in the Packers, I'd imagine, if he had stayed there. Yeah. Josh Jacobs, I feel like is a pretty elite running back. Look at what Chuba Hubbard's doing in Carolina. We didn't even talk about. These are guys that deserve to at least have some mention, because if they're not doing what they're doing, some of these running backs are literally carrying their teams. Like, Chuba Hubbard was the better, who is a better skill player on the Panthers? That's the one that got the contract this year, right? That's the one they decided to re-up. They didn't re-up any of these other guys.
And he's just
Hubbard, the running back.
Right. And he was just in there because their number 1 was injured. That's the only reason he got start. So their number 1 running back was injured in IR. So it's like, oh, well, Chuba Hubbard came in there. And look at Tony Pollard. Dallas let him go. Look at him. Look at his average.
Number 7. Yeah. He's number 7 on the list. Rushing. Yes. Tony Pollard. So they could be helping teams. Joe Mixon's been a touchdown machine. Look at Joe. Joe Mixon has 786 and he's missed games.
Yes. Yeah. He'd be right there.
So when you
look
at stuff like 5. That, you're like, come on, man. Like, let me see. 10 touchdowns for Saquon. 13 touchdowns for Derrick Henry. 7 for Jacobs, 10 for Gibbs. Bijan doesn't have that many. That's like 6 for Bijan is okay. But 10 for Mixon, and he's missed games, and he's got 10 touchdowns.
Exactly.
So this is the kind of things, if you're looking at Cincinnati, you feel pretty good if you like Chase Brown. I like Chase Brown, so I feel like you're feeling pretty good in Cincinnati. You're feeling pretty good in Green Bay because you did get Josh Jacobs, right? So you're feeling pretty good about that. Where you're not feeling as good, in my opinion, is definitely Dallas. Dallas could have used anybody at running back. Dallas could have used.
Derrick Henry was sitting right there. So if you're letting Tony Pollard go.
Tony Pollard was on your team literally, and now he's 7th in rushing for another team here. Saquon, of course, the Giants aren't doing well. Derrick Henry, I mean, fortunately, they were able to get Tony Pollard in there, so the Tennessee Titans not doing as bad without him. And then, of course, the Raiders, it's a dumpster fire. So it doesn't really matter. Like Josh Jacobs is probably just better for him that he was able to get off that. Better for him that he was able to get off the squad, man. I mean, they don't like they're going anywhere this year, so that might have actually worked out well for him because now in Green Bay, it looks like they're beating folks, and Jordan Love is doing what he does. Josh Jacobs just running folks over, doing what he does, and it's exciting to watch, man. I've been excited to watch the running backs this year. I don't know. Maybe it's a sense of like, I don't know if it's maybe because I play fantasy football and a lot of my running backs are going off. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. But it just seems like running backs have been pretty steady this year, whereas some of these wide receivers can be up and down. You know, have up and down games. Your Brandon Ayuk's of the world just disappearing, right? Stuff like that is more concerning. And I think that when you're looking at the money of where the money's going to go, am I going to pay a wide receiver? Am I going to pay a quarterback? Am I pay a running back? I think this year has showed that the running backs deserve a pretty good look because some of these other guys and these other positions that have been paid aren't even playing right now on their teams.
Right. Exactly.
Let's go to our guy here, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, man. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. So from the word on the street is they're moving off of him after this year. What are your thoughts on that? They said the Rodgers era might be over after about really a year into it because the first year is kind of a fluke, right? I mean, you got a mulligan there. The first year he didn't even play. So you really only had one out of the 2 years of the Aaron Rodgers experiment, and it's not going well right now.
Yeah, and it's like it's the old tale we always say. I mean, if you're gonna go and just talk to the media and just be that distraction, you better put up numbers. You better be a winner. I mean, how many times have we seen this? How many times have we seen this book? How many times have we read this book or seen the story? Or Steve Smith, Cam Newton, and just the list goes on and on. Right? Those guys, once they stop producing, if you're going to be just that person that's always going to be in the media complaining about this, talking about this or not, and just not being a teammate, well, when your numbers start falling off, now granted, he is 40, and I don't blame him. I don't want to get hit either. If I'm
they knew he was going to be 40 before this year, though.
True, they did.
You see that captain C they have on that uniform there in the picture that we're showing for the audience that can see it. They knew that they were giving a 40-year-old man that C, man.
Right.
They knew who they were giving that to. And now this is what they get.
Yeah.
That's what they get, man.
I mean, it's just funny because then my favorite thing is when they start showing the side by side comparisons between Zach Wilson last year to this year, where they're him against Rodgers, like they're almost like identical. So it's like
that's disgusting, right?
You're right. Right. You got a future Hall of Famer versus a future backup. This is good. They pretty much mirror the same statistics.
Who's the blame here? Who do you lay the blame on? Because they fired was it Joe Douglas? They fired their GM. So Saleh got fired a while back ago. Then they fired the GM. Now I didn't think the GM was terrible. I like some of the players. I think they have.
Did you see his draft picks? They showed his draft picks. What he got. I mean, it was like. I was like, oh, you forgot what he did. It's like, oh, he brought in a lot of talent.
He had some good players. They just didn't add up, but it wasn't for lack of effort on his part. I mean, you got some guys there that if teams were to come in and they could do some shopping on your teams, a few guys they'd want. Like you could always tell how good of a job your GM does by how much another team would fleece your team or try to come in and get players off your team if you decide to blow it up. If you decide to blow it up, are they coming for 2-year players? Are they coming for 5-year players? If they're coming for 5 or 6-year players, that means you have 5. You've got good guys on your team. You guys maybe underperforming. it's kind of like how I felt the Chargers were for year after year. They always seem to have guys on their teams just not putting it together for some reason. And the Jets are like that. So I don't know if he deserved to be fired, but what he do? And I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the ownership, which tends to come down to when you have rotating coaches and rotating players and stuff like that, and you can't seem to get the culture nailed down. Look what happened in Washington, man. They got Dan Snyder. That thing seemed like it changed overnight, man. Jaden Daniels, that thing's off to the races. It's like a new day in Washington.
Right, and that's the thing. And I look back at the draft before I jumped on the podcast just to see what they could have drafted before, but besides Zach Wilson, and there wasn't. I mean, quarterback wise, there was nothing there. I mean, that was the Mac Jones. Trevor Lawrence was the first pick, and we're still kind of on the fence on what he's going to be, right? So that may not even be still a home run pick. But you have the Trey Lance, the Mac Jones, and was in that draft. So it's not like there was something better sitting there, but there was some much better talent other than on defensive and offensive side. So I mean, I don't blame them for like taking a shot, but then it's like, if you look at the last few years at Green Bay, it was kind of telling you that the numbers were trending down, and it's like, like, it's just like, I mean, yes, Rodgers is going to have those moments, but the numbers, those numbers were starting to trend not in the best direction. Now, again, you can go, oh, you didn't have the talent around them, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's we bring them here. It's different. But it's like history always tells us, if those sorts of numbers start declining, then you should start looking the other way. It's like, Drew Brees, when he started declining, it was very noticeable. When Big Ben started declining, I think, we got to stop thinking, that Tom Brady was the anomaly. It was phenomenal, but you just can't think that, he's in great shape. He can do it. Yes. And don't be wrong. I've seen some games. You've probably seen some games too, where Rodgers says throwing the ball, and it looks like, oh my gosh, like that's the old Rodgers. But it's like it's almost like watching Dame Lillard with Milwaukee. It's like once a week. You got. I think I got one text today. He's got Dame time again. But how? Same thing with his quarterback, right? When you get 40, is it once every couple of weeks? Because that's where we're at right now with him. Like,
has he played the entire season?
Yes. I don't think he's missed.
Okay, so he hasn't missed it. Let's look at his games. Go games played.
I don't think he's missed a game.
So let's go down to he's played 11 games. Okay, so let's look here. 24-42 on the yards, 15th. Okay, about middle of the pack here. And it's funny too. Tied 9th for a touchdown, 17. Touchdown interception ratio, you expect that to be pretty good here. And he's got that about 2-1, which is, you expect from Aaron Rodgers. 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 51.4 on the QBR. Never been accused of being an excellent leader. So, some of these things are to be expected here. When you come down to games played, now this is something interesting. When you look at his stats at Green Bay, and we just go look at the last few years here, I think you're right in a sense of you go from 2020, 4,200 yards, 4,300 on a roundup, 2021, 4,100, 2022, 3,700. When you're looking at completion percentage on this with the same years going from 2020 all the way down, the 2020 was the best at about 71%. Then he's at about 69%. Then he's at about 65% at his last year in Green Bay.
Right.
So all those numbers were trending down. What is it? 48 touchdowns to 37 touchdowns to 26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 4 interceptions to 12 interceptions, 26 and 12 on that last year. So he was definitely trending in the wrong direction here when the Jets took this on, and they were probably hoping, because you're looking at what you got and you're like, hey man, look at what we got here now, and I feel like it's better than that. Do you feel like Saleh was to blame for any of this, or do you feel like he just got some of the blame here?
He got some of it. I think Saleh never struck me as a good NFL coach. I think he's a great defensive coach. Like, you're going to see him on a sideline next year, and he's going to be a great defensive coordinator. I think and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think maybe he'll get another shot, because I think Dan Quinn was the same way. Quinn, he was kind of the same. maybe he took his lumps. He had a couple, obviously definitely took us to the Super Bowl, right? We're
Yeah, I was gonna say
right.
he wasn't trash.
He wasn't trash.
He's only a winning coach who went to Super Bowl. Like
He went
that's
Super
just
Bowl, but
not
again,
terrible.
no, but like the last couple of years, right? It was really bad, but he went to Dallas and became this phenomenal defense coordinator. And he's even said that. It's like, man, I'm glad I was able to step back and get back in the defense coordinating role. And I think that's really helped.
Redoing your whole Legion of Boom Seattle situation.
Right.
That's what you came from. That's your lineage,
Exactly.
And
so
you're seeing the same thing for Saleh. Here's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think he's going to be, because he was a great defensive mind in San Francisco. Like I said, the guy will be on a sideline next year coaching a defense. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what he ends up being for the next few years, but maybe he gets a chance again to coach. Because he's a good defensive coordinator, so he will be on a sideline next year.
Now, I thought I can't say that I think he's a bad coach because I don't know. Right. It's always hard for me to evaluate coaches when they're missing key positions. So when you're missing your quarterback, it's so hard to evaluate you because I don't know and you've seen Bill Belichick get fired missing his quarterback. Like you don't ever know what these guys are when their teams are just missing main pieces. There's not really next man up quarterbacks out there for people who love to use that term. The next man up. Oh, it's just next man up. You don't tend to have next man up sitting on your bench out there. Not a lot of Michael Penix type situations, right? Sitting out there. There's not a lot of situations like that out there. So you can't miss next man up that. And I feel like that's what happened to Robert Saleh the first year.
Right.
With this year, they're just not necessarily putting together. I'm not sure if that's his fault or not, but you are the coach. I guess this is how it works. But I really wish he got a chance to finish this out for the year. I don't think he deserved for it all to fall on him. And as we end here on our boy Woody Johnson, who's always rocking that Woody chain, which I love so much that I oftentimes see him in rocking the chain. When it comes to the only blame I will lay here is there's some thought here that people were saying that he was interfering, wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers for Tyrod Taylor early in the season. Coaches thought that was insane. I think it's kind of insane too, only because why do you have Rodgers can't bench the guy? And you got to at least let him play 17 games. Like at least let us see 16, 17 games of the Aaron Rodgers experiment. I mean, before we just bench the guy. They say, then this is rumor, but they said that he wanted to bench him earlier in the season. If I could lay anything at the guy's feet, it would be probably that, just in the sense of like, you don't really want to see owners meddling in football decisions. It rarely ever goes well if this is true. But at the same time, I mean, maybe you're just you're spinning your wheels here, trying to figure out different things. They say that there was a fracture in the relationship with him and Saleh, and then shortly after Saleh was fired, stuff like that. I don't really like, because it comes all across as emotional, and your team is just not that good, bro.
Right.
Your team is just not that good. With some of these owners and the thing that asked, I thought the same thing with Tepper. Like, last year when they're firing Coach and Frank Reich, I think got fired very early. Your team's not good.
Right.
Your team's not good. You guys have traded away all your good players. You traded away DJ Moore. You traded away Christian McCaffrey. Like you traded all your players. So when you trade all your players, you traded away Brian Burns, right? All your players are gone on that team. So you're not going to have a good team. And there's not going to be a miracle you can work. So that's where I kind of don't get owners when they're saying, oh, they got a rich, he's a billionaire, and he's impatient. Well, you being impatient doesn't mean you have a starting quarterback now. Or you being impatient doesn't mean that all of a sudden now you got to multiple star receivers. Devontae Adams literally just got there. He just got there.
Yeah.
So that you just got a second receiver like 3 weeks ago on this team, right? They got one like 3 weeks ago. And Saleh wasn't there for that. He's been fired way before that. So Saleh was there with just Garrett Wilson and Tyler and Conklin, right?
Yeah,
you throw those guys out there.
They have talent. That's talent's not the issue. That's that's the thing. So
you have a situation where you just. I think that he should have been a little bit more patient with him throughout this. At least let him and Aaron Rodgers blow it all up together, right? So I would have loved to see this all get to the end of the year. and say, hey guys, this just didn't work out. Let's just blow this thing up together. But you're fracturing it in pieces here and there. It doesn't seem like it's going to lead to any success, I guess, for this season,
Right. And it's not like you have a young quarterback you want to see, right? It's Tyrod Taylor. We love Tyrod. He's got a great nickname, Hot Rod.
You're right. That's not a Michael Penix, Patrick Mahomes, right. Jordan Love situation, just waiting in the wings to come over here and take this franchise over. Absolutely.
Exactly. So it's like, why just run Rodgers out there? You're paying him all this money. I mean, why not just throw him out there and see? And
he's pedestrian. He's not terrible. I think there should be like a little bit of a difference. He's not trash. He's just Rodgers trash.
Right. Right. Yeah. And other than you want to make sure you get a higher draft pick, but even in this class of quarterbacks that's coming out, it's not like last year. Like, it's not like you can just, Sanders is probably your number one, but if you look at the ceiling, he's probably the number 4 quarterback from last year's draft. If you put him up last year's, right? I love the guy, but I'm just looking at what came out this year. Come out last year. So what are you trying to get to? Because here, and I thought about this today. What if? And I was going to throw this what if to you. What if the Jets call up the Falcons and say, "Hey, we'll give you our first round pick for Penix"? They need a quarterback.
I really don't want to give up our guy, man. I feel like we could take a defensive player, but here's my problem here. Here's my problem. As I look around the landscape, I don't want to be any of these guys that don't have another quarterback. Like when all these situations come up, I'm so happy we're in our situation. You see what I'm saying? Like whenever I look around, the last thing I want to do is get rid of our spare tire that we have over here and go give him to someplace else. And then Kirk falls back over a running back or something. And now we're in the same situation as these other guys and back in the same situation that we've been the last couple of years. Right. I am very happy that we got a guy in the wings, man. I just don't want to be these other teams. I look at what these other teams got going. I look at the fact that they're usually one injury away from disaster for their franchise. And I feel like we're at least a couple injuries away. we're not like super, but at least we got a couple guys. I'm not anxious to give that away, even though I do see why you would think about it because there's some great players. Jared Verse, I really like him and what he's doing for the Rams, man. A player like that would be amazing here for the pass rush. Right. But at the same time, I just don't want to be a team that does not have another quarterback that seems that I can viably put into the game and feel decent about. You know what I mean? I feel like I haven't just given up on my entire season.
Or when they say who the backup is, you're like Google searching, like, who's this guy? I didn't even know.
Right. Guys you even know are still playing in the league. You're looking up guys like,
Tyrod's in the league.
There's guys are going to be like that. You know what's funny? I just looked up Zach Wilson. Hold on. Stop the presses here. Let me go to Zach Wilson here. Hold on. Let's go to Zach's stats for people who feel like maybe Rodgers. So
look at that.
Let's freeze frame. Let's freeze frame Rodgers though. Rodgers 20. Let me tell you how trash. This is how trash Zach Wilson is. This is how trash he is. 24-42. Okay, for Rodgers. All right. Mm-hmm. Zach Wilson had 23-34 for 13 for 2 more games. Zach Wilson had less yardage. Zach Wilson had, let's look at his what is his touchdowns there? 9. Okay. 9. Zach Wilson, you can add up all his touchdowns of his entire career is 23. Aaron Rodgers has 17 now.
Yep.
He's got 17 now. So for people who don't feel like it can't get any worse, you feel like maybe you remember, maybe you have a glow in, how sometimes when you break up in a relationship, you start to think about the good days, man. What you don't remember is those arguments. You decide you get back with that ex, and it takes one of those arguments, Eugene, to be like, oh yeah, I remember. This is why you were my ex to begin with. This is why you're not on my team. You know what I mean? And that these people need to have some soul searching for our guy Zach Wilson here, who has 23-34 for the entirety of his 2023 campaign season before he got yanked. I just think that, hey guys, for people who let's Let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's go back to Aaron Rodgers here.
He's by the way, it was 2271. It was 2271 for his 2023 career or his stats. By the way, it's not like it's much different.
Wait, my bad. Wait a second. Okay. I gave Zach his 2021 season.
Yeah, it's
at 23-34. Yeah. I'm being way too nice to this guy because at the same time he was not only down some yardage there, but I want to say he had single digits. He had less touchdowns that season.
Yes,
he had 8 touchdowns that season.
Mm.
Yeah. For people who have a glowing memory of our guy Zach, just remember 8 touchdowns. See if that. How do you like that? You're complaining about 17. You're 17. You're ready to shut the guy down. You want to throw Aaron Rodgers out of here at 17 touchdowns. How quickly we forget a year ago.
Exactly.
We forget a year.
Exactly.
And this is a situation that I'm talking about, man. I don't want to be these guys, Eugene. I don't want to be in a situation, Eugene, where I'm having to think about what my franchise is going to look like if my quarterback gets hurt. I don't want to think about it, man. Mm-hmm. I don't want to think about it. It would take, what kind of offer would we have to get, Eugene? Like for me to move off Michael Penix,
it had to be a first round.
The offer would have to be incredible. It would have to be an incredible offer. You know what I mean? Because you got to think, it's not always just getting the pick to pick the player you want, or it's not always getting a certain pick, but it's having circumstances fall to where that player falls to you. So not only did we have our pick last year, we had a pick where we got a quarterback that we like of the future fall to us at said pick. Now we all know if that draft was to be redone, some of those teams are reaching for a quarterback before we get to him. Like they're taking Penix out of there before we get him at where we got him at. So I'm looking at it as like, well, we got a value. I'm not really rushing to just throw our value out the door here, man. I want to see what we got, because if he ends up being very good, it can come back to bite us. Let's say we get a safety or something with a first round. We get a good safety or something, but Penix goes on and tear it up for a decade or so afterwards.
Yeah.
I would have rather had Penix for the decade.
I know. I was just throwing the hypothetical out there because our pass rush has been horrible this year. But again, we can always address that in free agency. And again,
what if a team gets desperate? What if they say 2 first rounders? Do you have to go at 2 first rounders?
I think you have
first rounders. 2 first rounders. You got to go. You think?
If it's one of those ones where it's like, where we get the first round this year, and then maybe they add like the clause next year, like he has to play so many penalties, like they did with Rodgers, right? Had to play so many games, average so many yards, and then it becomes either it stays the first round, or if he doesn't do that, then it qualifies to a second round. But yeah, it had to be something like that because he's like you said, quarterbacks are their value is so high right now. It's like you can see, look at all the teams that are in playoff hunt. Every team has a quarterback. I mean, even, and if you don't, you have like Minnesota. I mean, we could say what you want about Darnold, but I mean, look, he has 2 good receivers.
Pretty darn good to me.
Good receiver.
I'll tell you that.
2 good receivers, good running back, good defense. Look at Denver. Good running back, good receiver, good defense. So like, if you can't get the star quarterback right now, you at least build it the other way. So it's like, but the majority of the teams, what's the number one thing they have is a starting quarterback.
Very true. This is Just a Stats. Check us out. Search iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. See you next time, ladies and gents.